that wants to send students to Minuteman has to pay the equivalent tuition and capital contribution. The provision in this agreement says that this is subject to state law because it's my understanding that the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is the one that sets these numbers, these tuitions and capital contributions, and so we need to work out that they're willing to let us set those numbers at the same level as member communities. But the problem is that if you don't do that, then there's less incentive for non-members to maybe consider joining. You have to make it a little more painful for them to be non-member communities and sending their kids there than it is currently. And so basically what happened is Minuteman School Committee met last night and they voted to recommend this document with the addition of Lincoln and Carlisle as potential withdrawing communities. So now it comes back, it's come back formally to all of the district members, and we're all in the process of calling town meetings. Last night, our board, as I said in my email, voted, or not, we didn't vote. We just discussed it and decided that we'd wait until we were absolutely sure that there's only going to be one article and not two pertaining to Minuteman. Even though last night I had heard by email from Pam Norse, who's the Acton rep on the Minuteman School Committee, that they had just voted to go forward with just the amended agreement and then put off recommending the financing until February. So I knew that it meant that in all likelihood the February special town meeting that most of us are trying to have would only be concerning the amended agreement. I wanted to wait until we got official word from the school committee. So anyhow, on January 4th, the Board of Selectmen in this town will vote to call a special town meeting for February 2nd. We'll presumably have the one warrant article, and we'll open and close the warrant the same night. And then sometime in February, the school committee will presumably be recommending the financing part, the Module 5. And at that point, then there's a little more time for member communities to consider it. And I'm hoping that it means that a town like Acton, if the selectmen think that it should be on the warrant, we'll be able to get it on our annual town meeting warrant, and without creating any problems for the Minuteman district about getting the funding approved. One of the issues that we're waiting to get more guidance about is whether we can have some sort of provision either in this amended agreement or somewhere else that says that if you are approved to withdraw as of the end of February, when all of the district members should have voted on this amended agreement, if as of the end of February it's clear that certain towns are withdrawing, then we'd like those of us who are staying would like to have those member towns somehow either agree to pass over the financing proposal or do something so that they're not participating. And it's not even a concern about their voting down the bonding proposal. It's just that they're voting at all. They shouldn't be involved voting on something that isn't going to have any kind of financial impact on their communities. So we're still waiting to see if that's going to be feasible. So, but.
Thank you, Janet. So do a majority of the existing members still have to approve withdrawal of any member?
Yeah, right now, yeah, all of the members have to approve this agreement for this to go through. If this agreement is approved, then withdrawal subsequently, not this first round. The first round is going to be pursuant to special provisions, but there is a provision for withdrawal after after the 7 towns, and it will require less than unanimity.
Well, right now the agreement requires unanimous approval of the other 15 towns. for anybody to leave. So how is it we're revising the
It
agreement?
will require, I think it's 3/4.
But do all the towns have to approve this revision to the agreement? That's
This,
the way it was a few years ago.
you mean this, yeah. That's.
I mean, we have an agreement right now. It requires all
Yeah,
towns.
we have an agreement that was last amended, I forget when, but anyhow, and then there was an attempt in 2013, 2014 to amend it again, and it got to 10 town meetings approving it, and then it stopped there. The
Right.
remaining 6 wouldn't, and that's why it hasn't gone into effect. So,
But
yes, now we have a new and improved proposed amended agreement, which includes, it basically is the 2013, 2014 amended agreement with some additional provisions, and those are the ones that are flagged, they're redlined in this document, but it's still,
But there's-
approving this requires unanimity.
Right.
After this, if this gets approved by all 16 current members, then it'll be a little bit easier for towns who are members to do anything,
Do we
so.
know if, say, Arlington is going to approve the revised agreement?
Arlington was prepared not to approve the building project. They want to stay in the district, but they had qualms about the current agreement. They really want the proportional voting that the amended agreement would provide, among other things. So they really were saying that among members that want to stay in the district, they were among the ones that said they would vote against the building agreement if they couldn't get this thing amended first. It was really important because I think that there was a concern that once the building project got approved, if it did, that the momentum for amending the agreement would be sort of lost. It would dissipate a bit and it'd be harder to do afterwards, so.
And are we going to get an answer from the Department of Education about charging a capital fee for non-member towns before the vote on February 2nd?
Yeah. DZ is, there's communication between Minuteman and DZ, and I think some of the selectmen also have been communicating with DZ. DZ is actually looking sort of favorably on the efforts of the selectmen to try to reach consensus. And so, yeah, I'm expecting that DZ will get a response to us once, I guess all the towns have called town meetings and they're ready to go. I assume that then DZ will have something to say about it. We've already gotten a draft warrant article, but.
Well, I don't know that the school is viable if that doesn't happen, that you're losing half the membership.
Well,
And if
as
you
I
can't
said,
charge you can't charge the out-of-district students a capital charge, then I don't know that the building project is viable.
yeah.
So I think we need the answer.
No, well, I think, yeah, that's, but in the meantime, we can't wait for DZ to affirmatively say that they're going to approve it. We just have to keep moving.
No, we don't.
Yeah, well, we do. I mean, I know that you were one of the people who said, why should we let anybody out? But honestly, if you had been embroiled in this battle, you would understand that you've got to let people who want to get out. So.
No, they made a deal. We're in a region together. They were there. They allowed the school to get into the condition that it is now, and they want to get out before they have to pay the piper. I think it's grossly unfair to the remaining members.
Yeah, the trouble is I don't know. I wasn't involved in Minuteman oversight when they were starting to need repairs and improvements, and the condition of the building went downhill. So I don't know what the history is of that, but I mean, I think that you could probably spend a lot of time going back in time to figure out who's at fault. I would say that there probably are numerous people who are at fault, and anyhow.
So can we renegotiate our deal with Boxborough?
What, you mean our AB, the regional
If
school?
we're sufficiently unhappy with the way the assessments are going, can we renegotiate?
Are you?
I'm just saying.
Are you serious, or are you being sarcastic?
It's the same kind of a deal. We made a deal. Some people are unhappy. Can we just change it now? Is that the way this works?
Yeah, it's a rhetorical question. Or sarcastic, or both.
I'm not sure it's a rhetorical question or not. Thank you.
Yeah.
Janet, this assessment attachment that you included today, is that how it would look with the 5 minus the 5 towns dropping out?
I think, I don't, you know, I honestly, the trouble is there was no explanation attached to that, and that wasn't something that we got. It seemed to me to be an illustration of how the new formula is going to work, because I don't know where they were getting the $1 million per year payment of principal and interest. I didn't know where that was coming from. It wasn't clear to me, but that was my, you know, I don't, you know, have the skills that you guys have in reading spreadsheets. So it could be representing something completely different, but, you know, that was my assumption. But it wasn't something that we had seen last week, so. And there are a lot of abbreviations that I'm not sure I understand, so.
So just to be clear, so you're saying we are having a special town meeting on February 2nd?
Yes, that's the plan. We haven't called it yet, though.
So it's like a third special town meeting?
It's,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. But it's something
real-
that you can't avoid, I'm hearing.
Well, I mean, we could just refuse to call a special town meeting, but we would look like, well, I won't say what we would look like, but as a town that supposedly, that has close to 30 students lately, or 25 to 30 students in the school, and has, you know, we agreed to the amendment in 2014, and we expressed support this year as a board for the building project. I think that we wouldn't look like very good players if we just refused, because that would basically guarantee that the amended agreement would fail.
Yeah, no,
You'd
no,
have
I
to-
understand that, but I just want to make sure that, so it's not something that we can, it has to be that date. We can't put it off till the annual town.
It has to be, you know, if we could do it next month, it would, but we're not going to do that. I mean, we have to do it no later than, I forget if it's mid-February or late February, but we have to do it in February, and preferably the earlier the better. Yeah, we can't postpone it. What will get postponed is a vote on the financing, because there was a lot of concern among the representatives, the select representatives. Okay, you're having these votes in February, all 16 towns on this amendment, and some towns are going to follow through and actually get their town meetings to approve their withdrawal, and some towns might not. And so we're supposed to vote then on the financing proposal without knowing who's in and who's out. I mean, you could have projections about worst case scenario if, you know, 7 towns, 5 towns, 3 towns, or whatever wanted to get out. But it's not really the ideal way to have your voting public weigh in on a fairly substantial obligation. And of course, there's always the option with this financing. You do have the option, if you don't object, you can just not call. You know, you don't have to bring it up at annual town meeting, but I have a feeling that isn't the way our board wants to proceed. I think that it's a big project, and it's important, and that the public know about it.
So
Yeah.
February 2nd, there's a special town meeting to basically vote on the agreement,
Yeah,
right?
and that will be all.
Not on the project.
No, what I'm sure that there is going to have to be information during the special town meeting about that looming ahead, because people are going to want to know, well, what happens? What's going to be the financial impact if these towns withdraw? You know, that's what people, and the spreadsheets that I included, well, that were in the Board of Selectmen's packet, indicate that relative to today, under today's agreement, I think that the board, our town would actually do better under the amended agreement. You know, however, well, it hasn't been calculated for 7 towns withdrawing, but we're not going to be the ones who are going to be suffering. It's going to be the towns with the wealth adjustment in the calculation of their capital contribution. So.
But it does, you know, I mean, you know, my question also was Steve's, which is that if 7 out of the 16 towns drop out, you know, that really seems to put in peril the entire building project, because now you have, I mean, I know a lot of them are smaller towns, but some of them aren't, and it just seems like, wow, that's going to be even harder. I mean, it's already a massive amount of money, and then to try to think that we can do that with only 9 towns, I don't know. I mean, the committee knows that I have serious doubts about this whole project because I feel like there haven't been the number of students there that they think they can get. There's just been, deteriorating demand, and all these communities want to drop out. I mean, to me, it just seems like maybe we shouldn't be having a technical school in our region, and we need to send our kids to another place that really want that education.
You wouldn't say that if you knew how difficult it is to find space in other schools that are proximate to it.
I know it's very difficult. I know there's waiting lists, but that's the thing about our school. There's not waiting lists. There's tons of empty spaces. So maybe we have to think about a much smaller model. I mean, anyway, I could go on about
Well,
it.
that's why the current school is big. It's too big. And that's one of the reasons that they're setting the target number at 628. I mean, that's the smallest. 600 is the smallest number for which you could get state building assistance. That's what, the MSBA said, and that's why we set it at 628. That contemplates that about 100 of those students at most would be coming from non-member communities. But the idea is that we'll have a new school. It will be scaled to better serve the communities that are actually in the district, and it will be new. I mean, it will be state-of-the-art and new, and the expectation is, given how little new construction there has been of vocational schools in the area, that it will be a big draw.
Right, but I was sort of disconcerted. It was disconcerting for me to learn that when I went to one of those meetings they had, that they hadn't done any kind of outreach to even assess demands. They were just saying that they thought they could get to 628, even though they're way below that now, and just sort of hoping for the best because they had a new building. And that was concerning to me. And now you have 6-7 communities that don't even want to be part of it. To me, that looks like there's just, there's not a lot of demand for it.
Well, first of all, as I keep saying, when you look at those 7 communities, you have to consider that a number of them have no idea what their towns are going to say about remaining in the district. They are hedging. They are reserving their options because they have historically been smaller enrollment communities, with the exception of Sudbury, who is well known to a number of people in FinCom and Board of Selectmen, because there was a period when we were getting angry emails from a certain school committee rep about, just various issues that most of us didn't understand and didn't really want to know about. But Sudbury has a somewhat larger number of students, but they've already apparently explored Neshoba, and there's no assurance that they'll get in, but they recognize that as a risk, and frankly, I think that's a huge risk. You want to have a guarantee that your students are going to be able to get into these other schools before you sort of cut off the option that you have. But that's Sudbury.
Yeah, it's ironic. Arlington has the highest population. They have 117 kids at Minuteman. As of, from what they said at ALG last, or 2 weeks ago, we were up to 33 students now. So.
Even Lincoln is up. Lincoln is, I think, up to 10, and they might go up to 15. They were shocked because they've been sort of lingering around 5 or something like that for a long time. But
yeah, Sudbury has 25. Lexington has 44.
Yeah, Lexington is bigger too.
Pretty significant.
Can they just, once they withdraw, can they just choose to send their kids back as out-of-district students?
They can. I can't remember if there's any sort of restriction on how soon you can do that, but yeah, they could, but then it would be subject to, you're assuming we can get the state to approve that. I don't know how we'll do that, but they're not going to be saving any money. Yeah, because the idea is you want to cover the expenses, and that's been an ongoing problem with, yeah, but it would be as if they were still, they were still members. Now, the risk, yeah, if the state approves it, and, you know, then we'd have to revisit it. I mean, it's just that the state really, they really need to, at some point, get more proactive and supportive of these, because there is a need for vocational education. I mean, there are all these articles about how all these jobs are going to be around in the next several years, and there aren't going to be people able to do them because we don't have enough facilities to provide the kind of training that is necessary for people to fill these jobs. It's not, you know, it's not highfalutin college educated, you know, it's technical stuff, and some of it is pretty specialized, but it doesn't necessarily require that you have a college degree, you know, but.
So,
In the long term, maybe that'll happen, but right now, there are people who say, well, the state should take charge of this. Well, we're not going to wait for the state, because the state has basically told Minuteman District, you've got to solve your own problems. Why should we?
I, for one, would not be willing to support anything until the state says whether or not there's going to be the ability to charge capital, because otherwise, I think we'd be better off getting out.
Well, the state, DZ did authorize schools like Minuteman to charge non-member communities a capital fee, but I think it's not 100% of the share. It's some percentage of it, so you end up still falling short.
It wasn't enough. It happened a couple of years ago. It wasn't enough, because if it had been, Minuteman wouldn't be in this bind. They had a lot of out-of-district students at one point. They could have charged them the going
But the
rate.
trouble is that they haven't, it was only very recent that the state did that. It wasn't, you know, they should have done it from the outset. And at one point, the state set the tuition for non-member students, they lowered it, which made matters worse. So not only were you not getting capital contribution, but you also weren't even getting your operating costs covered, so.
so Janet, so if a town leaves the district and then wants to send their kids to the district, they have, say, 10 students, they have to be approved by the state to send their kids to that school?
I don't
Or is that
think-
just approved
I
by
think
the
it's
school?
up to the district.
It's up to the school.
It's up
okay.
to the district, it's up to the school committee.
But the state, who sets the rate? Is that going to be set by the school, the
That's-
school district, or the state?
Well, this is where, you know, there are some numbers there, yeah, there's some fees that the state has been involved in setting, and, you know, I think that that's where we need to have a discussion with the state, the DZ or whoever it is that sets the rates, to see if they can make an allowance for our district, because it's just not going to work. It's not fair to the member towns to subsidize non-member towns and their students. You know, it's fundamentally unfair, and that's probably a lot of the reason that Minuteman is in the mess that it currently is. Because I think member towns balked at having to do undertake a lot of capital expense that was going to benefit, you know, the 40% of the population whose towns weren't providing any of the money.
Well, what's
you know.
annoying too is that the state doesn't want to take over, but yet they're the ones that somehow have the prerogative to set the rate. Like,
Yeah,
why should they set the rate? Why can't the district set the rate and say, you are going to have to pay a capital cost? Why is the state involved at all if they're not going to just take it over? It's annoying.
Dave?
It's not your fault though, Janet.
No, I know, no,
I'm not-
hey, I have a husband who's Italian American, and he's trained me how to, like,
Is there?
argue.
one
So nothing bothers me anymore.
Does
But he
anyone-
also is financially astute, so, you know,
Does anyone know if the rate is the same at all the regional vocational technical schools?
I think,
Like Neshoba, is that the same as?
no, I think Neshoba's lower. I think that was one of the attractions for Sudbury, was Neshoba was lower.
So there is a rate difference.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about how they're set to know why that is. You know, I don't know if they have, you know, lower overhead or what, or lesser services, but.
I apologize in advance for this question, but hypothetically, what would happen if every town withdrew?
There would be no district.
And then
District
would
and the
everybody
school would
pay?
just be
an out-
shuttered, right?
I mean, in theory, the state would have to step in at that point, right? Because there's no ownership of the school.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at some point that the state wants there to be vocational education, but it has a funny way of showing it sometimes. You know, and I think that the state would be concerned about the well-being of the students who would otherwise go to Minuteman. That's sort of in the background. That's why they establish all these requirements, and they say you have to make these repairs because and they sort of threaten to pull the accreditation if the district doesn't make a lot of improvements. And so they really have, they supposedly have the well-being of the students at heart, although they've made it rather difficult for, I think, the district members to kind of do what they're supposed to be doing, just because of the way they've handled non-member students. So.
Well, and I wonder if there's a tipping point at which point everyone has to withdraw. I mean, if there's 7 communities already, now granted they're the smaller ones for the most part, but at what point, if we only have 5 communities left, we can't do it. We can't sustain it. So.
I heard that Wayland, which I was pretty sure was going to withdraw, their selectmen told somebody I know that don't be so sure that they're going to, because I thought of all of the towns that are in that list of now 7 that Wayland was most likely to withdraw. But because this amended agreement would reduce the minimum enrollment from 5 to 1, so basically you don't get penalized for having only 1 or 2 students then. And Wayland, I don't think, has the same sort of wealth adjustment in the calculation of their capital obligation. It may be that they think they'll reconsider it. I don't know. That's where each town is going to have a discussion about the pros and the cons. I think probably one of the most complicated discussions is going to be in Lincoln, because they've got the prospect of this enormous building, which their selectman rep said is the biggest building in town. They're concerned about making sure that the building, that Minuteman tries to comply with some of the local zoning requirements, doesn't sort of fall back on the fact that it's an educational institute, but at the same time I guess there's some political tension in that town, and that was why the selectman rep wanted to have this sort of payment in consideration of the fact that Lincoln would be a host community, even though the town of Lexington has been the host community for 40 some odd years and has never sought any kind of special compensation or anything like that. But the Lincoln BOS rep said, well, but I don't know if people might be uncomfortable having a building in the town over which they have no leverage because they're now no longer members of the district. And we're all sitting there thinking, those are things your residents your voters are going to have to weigh. You can't expect the district members to solve that. That's something that they're all going to have to talk about. But I think that, it'll be interesting to see what happens there, because there seems to be something going on, an undercurrent that I don't think really came out during our meeting.
One complication of all this is that if indeed these 5, 6, 7 towns withdraw and the new agreement is ratified, we now move to proportional voting. So whereas we had 1/16 vote of every matter of governance on this school, basically we'll now be in a minority position, and basically the town of Arlington will be running Minuteman. So we have to make sure that that's what we want for our kids. Basically, we will have little or no voice in this school.
You can always have alliances, though. Needham is going to stay in. They have similar numbers.
Most of our
Lexington.
Natural allies are on the withdrawal list.
Yeah, what happens with Boxborough? Because they're part of our other district, so if there's anyone in their town that wants to go, they just have to send them somewhere else.
Yeah, well, they have 5. On average, they seem to have 5.
But I guess, there's other ones, there's Concord, Carlisle, Lincoln, Sudbury.
And you mentioned.
Well, I appreciate Janet sending out that very detailed package this morning that had all those documents, the warrant article, proposed assessment, even is, could use a little help in identifying what those numbers are, as well as the revised, proposed revised regional agreement, among other things, and a copy of the proposed warrant article. So you all have that in your email that you received today.
Yeah,
Dave?
just one more on the new agreement. You mentioned you thought it was a positive for the town, and you just kind of lightly touched on a couple areas. What did you see as the overall positives of the?
Well, one of the, it's, although we refer to ourselves as an affluent community, and we are relative to a lot of the rest of the state, relative to some of the communities in the district, we're not. So then in the calculation of the capital contribution in this amended agreement, that's taken the wealth factor that is used to calculate Chapter 78 is taken into consideration in how much you're expected to contribute as a community, and that actually works in our town's favor relative to what we're currently having to pay.
And is that, if these other communities dropped out, would that still be reflective of that?
Yeah, that's what, I think that's what some of the spreadsheets were sort of reflecting what our contribution would be, I think, with regard to the financing. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was basically relative to, if we calculated under the current agreement, they're negative numbers. And of course, the more towns withdraw, the negative number starts getting smaller, but we're still somewhat ahead relative to the current agreement. And I think that because we have enough students, just enough students, I mean, the per pupil cost is not as great as, sometimes you hear when they talk about how much it costs at vocational educational schools.
So if we could summarize, what is the next step besides approving of the budget? Or we have to have a town meeting first to approve this warrant, and then all the towns approve the revised agreement, regional agreement, and then they approve the budget, move forward.
Yeah, around in February, the idea is that all of the 16 member towns will have special town meetings. They will vote just on this. If they are thinking about withdrawing, if they're one of the 7 towns and they really want to pursue that, then they're going to have another article that is about withdrawing from the district, which their town meeting also will vote. But the idea is by the end of February, all that will be done. You'll know what the district will look like once this agreement is approved and once it goes into effect, which isn't assuming that all of this happens next year, early next year, and that DZ approves it. It's not going to, the withdrawals won't go into effect until I think July 1st of 2017. So the member towns that are withdrawing are still going to be around. There's kids are still going to be going. There's going to be this transitional period. But back to February, once that's done, then we know what the district looks like. And then in February, the Minuteman School Committee is going to recommend the financing proposal, the Module 5. And then at that point, I don't know if I remember mentioned, it's the 60-day period for member towns to respond. And if they object, they have to call a special town meeting to object or whatever. If they have an early annual town meeting, they can stick it on that warrant to express their objection. You don't have to call a town meeting or put it on the warrant if you are okay with the financing proposal. But if anybody were to object at that point, then we'd have to go to the district-wide ballot to vote on the financing proposal. But the idea behind doing all this work to get the agreement amended is to increase the likelihood that there isn't going to be anybody who's going to dissent when we get to the financing proposal. Now, all bets are off because somebody could do something from the floor, and you really don't have any control over that. But certainly with regard to the people who are officially responsible for bringing these proposals forward, the hope is that there won't be this constant bickering that has been going on for 6 years. So
And this all has to go to the state by June, isn't that right?
it has to, yeah, we have to have, yeah, the district has to have approved the financing and have everything squared away by June 30th, because that's when the MSBA's offer of whatever, at least 40% reimbursement for the cost of the building goes away. And we're unlikely, we could try to get back on the list for a new building, but we're unlikely to do so because it's not as if there's any shortage of other opportunities for the state to invest its funds. So, but they've given us multiple chances. They've extended our opportunity to get our act together, and but this is it. You know, it's been 6 years, and in the meantime, we're sort of tying up funds that I think probably some other districts would like to have.
Yeah, I think based on my observation, just looking at the school committee, the Minuteman School Committee and the Minuteman Building Committee, there's a lot of support behind the new school, and the budget is reasonable, and a lot of excitement there. The issue centers around the regional agreement, which is sort of separate from actually building a decent school that the kids deserve. So it's ironic.
Well, there are some people who are staunch building supporters who say just keep the regional agreement separate, don't deal with it, there's no time. But there, as I said, towns like Arlington will not support the building project if they can't get the regional agreement approved. And it's just, there's so many problems. I mean, there are towns that just want to have the option of withdrawing, and you know, just this is a way to deal with that without having it be onerous. So
I think it makes sense.
Excuse me?
I think it makes sense, the order you're doing it in. I have one thing. So the Kelly's Corner Committee is planning a public forum to unveil the plan, and that's supposed to be February 4th, which is Thursday. So I'm a little bit worried about that now, because if you guys are calling a special town meeting on February 2nd, that's a lot. Yours is definitely going to be on February 2nd?
yeah. No, but it's one warrant article, and I assume that Pam Norse is going to be presenting, or I don't know. I'm sure that the superintendent, probably other people on staff will be there to provide sort of more technical support, but
The what? Wait, the only other date, the what? Oh, I see.
yeah, that's a big problem for us. We only have so many places for venues for larger groups, and the auditorium is very popular. There are a lot of activities that the students have. So yeah, I know, yeah, the 2nd and then the 4th is a lot for the public. Dealing with complicated issues, they should all be dealing with these complicated issues, you know.
I don't know. I think we may have to change it, but I don't know when we could change it to.
But you've set that date so far in advance. I honestly don't. They'll have a break. The 3rd will be. We'll endeavor to have nothing. You know.
No, I just think it will depress the numbers that we have. We have it 2 days after a big town meeting. So anyway, we'll have to think about that.
Well, we'll see. I'm sure there's going to be some efforts to get people to go to this thing, but it's not going to be like for the financing, assuming that shows up at our annual town meeting. We try to increase the attendance at special town meeting, but it's very, very difficult. It just, and this is sort of a special, just sort of a special and niche kind of an interest. I think that when we have open space acquisition, somehow that attracts more people, or, something related to sports. But, stormwater and Minuteman, not necessarily big draws, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jan.
No, thank you.
Done
And
a
if you have,
tremendous amount of work on this.
Well,
More
you're
to come.
also, in the middle of all this too, so, the building project, so. No, I find it interesting. I started to go to meetings 2-3 years ago because I didn't know anything about Minuteman.
At
and
one
then
point, I'd almost
yeah.
like to see a chart for this regional agreement, has pros and cons, what their arguments are for getting out versus staying in. Still try to get my head around, what those specific issues really are.
It's really money. I don't know. I don't think that's, because, yeah, thank you very much. And if you have any other thoughts, comments, feel free to send them to me, and I will share them with all of the selectmen reps and my own board. So, thank you. Now I'll sit down and listen to you talk.
Thank you, Janet. Now, Christina was going to be here to talk about the future needs of capital, but she did give us a handout, and for the purpose of our thousands of TV audience members out there, I'll read what her handout says. It's the Acton Boxborough, and the objective is what the school committee requires from us. They would like to get 2 members from the finance committee to join this capital and space planning committee. I'll read what her handout says. The Acton Boxborough Regional School District School Capital and Space Planning Committee overview. The Acton Boxborough Regional School District's School Capital and Space Planning Committee, hereafter called the committee, thank you, will include regular members that represent the citizens of the 2 towns in addition to members of the school administration. The work of the committee will center on the following tasks. To review space usage alongside enrollment projections in the school's 8 schools and preschool facility. I, to review the results of district-wide commission studies and reports that pertain to the district's buildings, grounds, and campuses. I, to assist in the annual review and development of the district's capital plan. Now, for committee members, the committee shall include at a minimum the following members: school committee representatives, 2, with 1 from each town; community volunteers, 4, with 2 from each town; municipal town representatives, 2, with 1 from each town; director of facilities is a member; director of personnel and administrative services is a member; and superintendent of schools is a member. Additional members of the ABRSD staff or administration may also be included as deemed appropriate. The committee will meet approximately every other month during the 2015-2016 school year and report out to the ABRSD school committee as necessary, but no less than once a year. The committee will also assist in the presentation of information related to the needs of the schools to citizens of the 2 towns from time to time as necessary, and provide recommendations to the superintendent as to how to disseminate relevant information. And that's the gist of her handout.
So it doesn't say anything about a finance committee representative, so now I'm confused, because she told us that she wanted 2 people.
Yes, 2 people.
But where is that? I don't know, I'm wondering, because I know they wanted to have some community at-large people, but that seems...
Yeah, Shin Yu?
Okay, and I mean, we've been talking about the capital planning for a while. I understand the necessity of doing so. But personally, I think that doing this for school and town separately, to me, is not the best approach. Always give me a feeling like we have in the one household. We need to talk about some in-house improvement. So we have father taking the left side of the house, mother taking the right half of the house. We are one community, and if we're talking about capital expenditure, I think it should be one committee. So here's the scenario I come up with. So let's say that we do separately. So school has a priority 1, 2, 3. Town has priority 1, 2, 3. Then how do we gonna decide which one has a higher priority? So this two committee will fight it out. I mean, so it seems to me that the one committee works better, and then that's all I'm gonna say for now.
Very valid points. Anyone else? Steve?
Well, I think a couple of meetings ago or so, when we heard from the schools, they were just had heard the existing conditions report. I think it won't be until next month when the next phase of the report is issued, and that will entail dollars. I think it's supposed to be January. In any event, we're not talking about a couple $1 million here. We're talking tens of millions at a minimum, and hopefully not 100. On the other hand, I noticed in the town budget that we're going ahead with money on the senior center study. My colleague's point is well taken. To quote Lincoln, a house divided against itself cannot stand. There's only so much money that we can hit the taxpayers for all at once, and some prioritization has to happen. And you know, I understand we're in a school district, so we can't dictate what the regional school committee does, but this needs a holistic viewpoint, because they don't send their own tax bill to the residents. The residents get one tax bill, and it has to incorporate all of these things.
Thank you. Margaret?
Sorry, so I was just texting Christina to get clarification on this, and I missed your overall comment. Can you repeat it? I was texting for a purpose.
I think Steve is much more articulate than I am, so I think he just reiterated my point. I just feel like we are one community. It's hard to prioritize building capital expenditures, just talk about school alone without thinking about town or vice versa. I think it would be better if the whole thing will be considered together so that we can prioritize that. As
meaning
saying,
we should look at the Acton municipal needs also along with this.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought you were saying, but I wanted to make sure. So this actually came up in our ALG meeting.
Right.
Because, you know, the selectmen, as we've suggested in our point of view, also want to form a capital planning committee to prioritize all these things that are coming down the pike in the town. And so some people were saying just what you were suggesting, which is, you know, that we should be looking at just doing one committee per town, and we look at it all together. And I feel like the school people didn't like that idea. Is that what you felt?
My impression was
They felt like they wanted, but then there was a sense of like you could overlap, you know, maybe the people that are from Acton that are on the school committee are also on the town one, and so there's at least that visibility. That's what I think what was articulated at the ALG
I think
meeting.
so, yeah. But clearly, I think their idea was to have separate capital committees.
They seem to want their own capital committee. They did not want it combined with that. But I think if whoever is willing to serve, if they're willing to do sort of double duty, it will achieve, at least in part, what you're saying that is necessary, which is to be able to look at the whole picture. So we're not just looking at school needs, we're looking at school needs, but we're looking at Acton town needs and being able to evaluate those, you know, holistically. So that's something, you know, I think my sense was that the school committee didn't want to get kind of caught up in what the town is doing, and they just really wanted to have their own separate thing. So.
I think if they were combined, it would be I'd almost hate to see what that actual number of capital requirements is. If you add the school plus all the municipal properties.
Select.
But I think the idea was that you'd have something like this, so you'd have like the Acton Capital Committee, then you have the school one, then a Foxborough has their own, and the idea is that you have these overlapping folks.
I don't see any finance committee members or board of selectmen.
I know, that's why I'm
Municipal
very
or town
confused.
representatives, one from each town means it's either going to be a selectman or it's going to be a finance committee
Yeah, I'm
member.
very
Well, it
confused.
also says minimum requirements.
So, this is a committee that's going to be heavily dominated by school staff and school committee members. It's not going to be a committee that weighs a lot of other options,
You're
other
saying
concerns.
It won't be objective?
You're putting words in my mouth, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
I mean, I think that the idea, again, if you have those community volunteers, municipal town representatives, and the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, I am confused because she did explicitly say that she wants 2 people from FinCom, so I am confused, which is why I texted her. But, you know, given that, you know, I think there is a fair amount of representation from the towns, and, you know, sure, you've got the school people too, but I don't see that as being highly problematic. We just have to get clarification on what this means, because we were specifically told that she wanted 2 people.
Right.
So maybe we should just talk about 2 people who would like to do it.
Yes.
Maybe she'll text me back, I don't know.
I nominate Doug.
But, yeah, exactly. With the caveat that those people might also be asked to serve on the Acton municipal town side. Janet, do you know what the process is for when that's going to be set up, the town capital planning committee?
Supposedly in the budget book somewhere, there's an appendix that has, where the town manager had drafted and inserted a proposed sort of outline or mission statement for a capital planning committee for the municipal side. But, yeah. I mean, what I've seen, Steve Noon sent me a number of bits of information about what other towns are doing, and I went digging into it further and sent it all to the town manager, who probably didn't want all that. But one of the things I noticed is that in some of the communities that, like Lincoln has a capital planning committee, and they also have a regional school. They're part of the Lincoln Sudbury Regional High School district, and I think that they provide oversight. They weigh in on issues that on the school side. It doesn't seem as complicated as it's not as if they're going to have full control, but it gives them, they keep track of what's going on the school side, just because they need to have that perspective. So, you know, I don't think when the municipal side creates it, I think it would be good to have, we're not going to just close our eyes to what's going on the school side.
Yeah.
I don't think. I haven't looked at the budget books yet since we got them, or since they went online this morning. So I don't know what his proposal looks like.
I actually think Doug would be a good person. I mean, I know he's not here, but
It was only half unjust. He actually.
he's, you know, he's expressed interest a lot in this, I feel like, and he does have some knowledge about it, so I do think he would be good. Who else?
So you're interested? Steve, are you interested? No. So Jason and Doug, anyone else? So I was wondering if our members should have, I mean, when they vote on this, they should be, or not when they vote on this, but when they attend these meetings, they should have, as our position, as the finance committee position, our point of view, versus personal opinions. So they should follow, you know, our strategy, our approved, voted on point of view position on whatever the case may be.
Well, this is why it's a little tricky, because if they're municipal or town representatives, you know, we can certainly say, here's what we think you should be saying. But if they're community volunteers, in that capacity, we really don't have any say over them.
That's different. Well, I mean, I think we can, I think that unless I hear back from Christina, we probably can't appoint people officially, but we can at least have this preliminary people that are interested, and then we might have to delay voting on it, but
Okay.
this is just not, I mean, this is just not clear at all, so.
Okay.
we can't
Well,
know
unofficially
for sure.
then, it would be Jason and Doug as our representatives to the Capital and Space Planning Committee for the school. And probably the municipal. Now, don't let all that power go to your head.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think it's not a power thing, right? It just is, Mike was saying, it's an ability for, it's a liaison, you know, it's an
Right.
ability for us to communicate through to that committee, through these people, and vice versa. So,
So are we done with that topic?
Yeah.
So we have the two names, although it's not.
it's not official.
And the next item on our agenda is the point of view feedback, since Margaret introduced this topic so thoroughly and efficiently, she could, if you have more comments to make, I think it was fairly straightforward.
Roland.
The comment was, in the point of view, it said that the feds were at a raised interest rates or considering. Well, last week the
Now they
feds
did.
raised. So the Fed funds
Very
rate,
true.
the open rate has gone from 0 to 0.25 to 0.25 to 0.50. Actually, yesterday's rate was 0.35, so it has raised.
Yeah, but it wasn't
Now-
raised when we published it, so.
Right, so
We'll
just
just leave
something
it
to keep
be.
in mind that
Yeah, no, I agree.
it's changed a little bit, but,
It has changed a little bit.
you know, interest rates haven't really moved that much since.
Let me just tell you where, so we had passed out, so Mike had sent the full document to the ALG members beforehand, and then we passed out the summary. And I think my sense was people were really only engaged on the summary piece of it, because that's what we went through. I'm not sure how many had actually read the whole document at that point. But the major pieces of feedback were, one, the idea of returning to structurally balanced operations. There was some pushback on saying, well, we can't do that right away. Immediately take out all of the reserve use in the budget. And I had just sort of expressed that the thought was really to sort of move towards that. You know, that doesn't necessarily have immediate effect, but just to move towards that.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we clarified, that we weren't saying not to do it. We're just saying it was our goal to move in that direction.
To move in that direction. And then there was also a thought about just generally with this no planned use of reserves, you know, some of the school people expressed the sense that, well, but if the money's there and we're down to, you know, what are we ever going to use it for if the money's there? And, you know, at that point, it was sort of like the conversation was winding down, but I think, so we didn't respond. We just sort of said, okay, and moved on. But I mean, I think our response really is that, you know, the whole point of the reserves is to be there for a rainy day, not to supplement this, not to be part of a, at least the whole point of our philosophy here is not for the reserves not to be part of, you know, of the budget the regular budget, but to be used for specific things, you know, rainy day type things, or the credit, exactly. So I feel like that was not sufficiently explained. I didn't explain it, but it was just sort of, they just sort of left it out there. And then the other piece was continue to fund the OPED contribution. Some people were nervous about saying that funded at current levels. So.
Yeah, our point of view document does not say at current level, it just says continue to fund OPEB. But the summary says at current levels.
And the reason I said that is I had asked Steve about it specifically because I was wondering, and so.
The town and the schools are now in distinctly different positions vis-a-vis OPEB. The town is possibly overfunded, or certainly online with funding. The schools have fallen behind the funding curve. So if you look at it town-wide, yes, current levels would be okay, but I think it would require more on the part of the schools and less on the part of the town. At this point, I don't see that there's much to be gained by giving town-wide recommendations. I think we need to be more specific and say, yeah. Again, there's material in the town's budget presentation, which I haven't, yeah, and that well could be. So I think they're, like I said, very different positions. And I think the schools are going to have to up the ante a bit if they're going to keep up making progress.
Well, and you know, I mean, I think we're not gonna change our point of view at this point because it's published, it's done. I don't know if you guys noticed it. I did put this submitted to the Beacon over the weekend, but I just wanted to make sure that we just heard that feedback. That was what people said. So,
Jason. $2035.
wait, I missed that. It was. Can you say that again?
2035, I think, is also the date when they would actually approve the regional agreement from Minuteman.
Exactly.
Like it's resolved.
So wait, 2023 was when? Okay, and OPED. Okay, yeah, it's sort of de minimis. Got it.
We go on a limb here and make a rash prediction that before we pay off all the bonds in the town, we'll have issued others.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like, oh, we're getting close to being done, so we can take out some new ones. Yeah. So anyway, so that's the feedback. I just thought I'd pass it on to you.
Yeah, I don't think they had any major issues. Just a wordsmithing issue here and there about.
Well, I mean, I think there was a disagreement about not wanting to use reserves structurally. I mean, I think the people, at least from the schools, were saying that seems way too hard. But and right now, you know, the ALG budget had like 2.9 million in reserves using it. So
The schools don't really have that much in the way of reserves. So
yeah, it's using our reserves.
So,
So
based on increases over FY16, which itself was not a structurally balanced year, the school assessment for 17 is preliminary number goes up $2.7 million. The towns, I wasn't getting a good, it seemed to move around a bit, but it's at least going up $1 million. Yeah, so that's 3.7 in increases. The effect of a 2.5% tax increase is about 1.9 million. So we're doubling down on the deficit we had in FY16. So the early numbers are not structurally balanced. They're more like going in the wrong direction. Because of the debt, it's hard to, X debt, it's one thing, with debt, it's another. But use $1 million. Yeah.
Okay, I just heard from Christina. She says, because I said, does the 4 community members, does this include FinCom members? And then she says, I believe so. The idea is that having board members' perspective is important. So then I wrote back, okay, it doesn't say FinCom or BOS, but you still want 2 FinCom members, so she'll probably text back in a minute. It's all live, doing it live. Oh, I see. She says the BOS actually said no. BOS said no. And Boxborough is sending 2 FinCon members. Sorry, it's all live. This is like to appointing somebody on their committee. Oh, BOS is waiting for makeup of town capital committee to be finalized.
Well, and the other thing is that Boxborough had already assigned their 2 FinCom members to this AB committee, and so for balance, it just seemed, yeah. Plus, we're going to have our own committee to deal with. So,
did she also send a smiley face with it?
No.
Okay, moving right along. We have finance subcommittees. Anyone have any updates on that they'd like to report on? Roland?
I went to the CPC on Thursday, and there was a presentation from the Acton Congregational Church, as I should say, one in South Acton and the one right here in the center. South Acton has a problem with their roof because the building is used a lot by outside organizations, and he lists a whole bunch. And because the building's heated, when the building was originally constructed, the ceiling obviously didn't have any insulation because it was constructed in the 1800s or 1700s. There's no insulation back then. So the winter wouldn't matter because they don't use it on Sundays, and there wouldn't be really any melting. And now with them renting it out during the week a lot, or it's used during the week, I should say, the building's heated more regularly, and that created a lot of ice dams and a lot of damage this past year. So they need to get the roof restored so that won't happen. Then the one in the center, they want to restore some stained glass windows, and there was some questions. There was 2 of the homes that they own too are historic properties that need some loving care, I guess. And they're also looking at they have been talking with the Acton Housing Authority and ACHC about putting low income into them. Putting low income tenants in there from this other town with the credit towards low income housing. So it'll be a win-win situation for everybody. The committees, they also want to do a master plan for one in the center. So the town council said that's a judgment call by the committee. I also pointed out to them that they've already done 2 master plans, one for the West Acton Baptist Church and one for Theater 3 that was funded by the committee. So it makes sense that being a historic structure that was built in the 1700s, that would make sense.
Right.
So they'll have to see on that. and the committee said, well, what about if you sold the homes? Well, the problem is with that is that they're all tied into the same septic system. So they said their intent is never to sell the homes, and that one of them was one of the Hosmers that owned one of them, and I forget who the other one was at the time, I can't recall, but they've been there for a long time, and their goal is to keep them under the church, but have them occupied by low-income tenants to also give back to the community. They're rented now currently at below market rates, but they're thinking more of going to talking to the housing authorities to work with them in conjunction to get it
Okay.
help the town.
Great, thank you. Bob?
The Health Insurance Trust approved its draft audit at its last meeting. We, in the fiscal year 15, lost $140,000. $99,000 of that was a contribution to the Affordable Care Act, because under the Affordable Care Act, employer programs, of which ours is obviously one, had to contribute money, X dollars per participant, to fund extraordinary expenses incurred by subsidized markets under affordable care. And this coming year, 16, we will have to pay, I think, about $70,000 into that, and then the third year, about $55,000 would go into that. So, on balance, we're not in too bad shape. Our unrestricted reserves are roughly 14% of operating expenses, which is, since we have no capital, that's almost all of our expenses, which is adequate, because that does not include what is in the current audit, $960,000, which is referred to as run out. It's to cover bills which are incurred within the fiscal year. So, for example, when you go to the doctor on June 30th, we won't get the bill probably until September or October, and yet we want to pay it out of the 2015 fiscal year. And normally about 10% of reserves is considered adequate for an operation such as we have. So on balance, things are reasonably bright. The current year, the cash flow numbers are quite positive, and so we will, if the current year continues as it has, a year from now, when I tell you about the draft audit, it will be a positive number of some such. In January, we have promised that we will make an estimate of what the rate structure will be for insurance in the next fiscal year, and we will actually vote the rates in February. Usually we don't vote a very different rate than have estimated in January. And the other good news is that Congress, in its last attempt to go home for the holidays, delayed by 2 years the imposition of the so-called Cadillac tax, which would have been a major problem for us to deal with. So we have another couple of years to worry about that. My own belief is that eventually it will be kicked so far down the road that it will disappear. But at the moment, we don't have to go back to the unions and try and negotiate something in order to keep us under the Cadillac tax provision. So on balance, the Health Insurance Trust is in good shape.
Thank you, Bob. Any update on OPEB, or any action in that department?
Well, here's the problem. Maybe some of you can help me. I have the reports from the town and the schools as of last December. And I have the report from Boxborough. Of course, it's not the same year. It's the year before, but what I can't do is separate out what was Boxborough teachers, or, whereas the Acton report used to specify what the APS piece of each number was. The Boxborough report does not. So I can't really do an apples to apples comparison of how we stacked up to 2 years before because of regionalization. That said, at a fairly high level, if you make some assumptions about the Boxborough report, it looks like we're pretty much where we said we would be. The differences are that the schools received a less than favorable discount rate, less than the 2 years before, which is why their liability is growing. The town got a better discount rate assumption because they were funding a greater percentage. And that seems to be the key differences between this report and the report from 2 years ago. Whether we have at this point, like I said, I think the idea of a townwide OPEB committee is kind of past its point of usefulness. I would like to go back to the capital planning committee and just ask you to ask a question. Is this committee going to make recommendations? Is it going to take votes? And if so,
What is the authority of the committee?
Yeah.
and if so,
It
is
doesn't, I mean, it looks like it's reviewing, assisting.
because
We can
it-
get clarification of that. I mean, I've just been texting with Christine, as she does say that her mom's in hospice. So,
I know.
anyway, I don't want to bother her too much right now, but it does say that, she did say that we can wait till January 12th to make the official appointment. That would be okay. So we can maybe get more.
The reason I ask is
clarification.
not to be too parochial, but this committee is pretty much split evenly between Acton and Boxborough residents and staff. Even the school committee voting is proportionate. So if they're actually gonna make recommendations and take votes, then I would say that we need to have the same proportionate voting on the committee as we do for the school committee.
Can you ask that when you go to the next school committee?
Yeah.
Do you go to the next school?
It's good.
Where do you find the schedule of those?
It's pretty much every other Thursday.
Every other?
Any update from Acton 2020, Kelly's Corner, that you
We
wish
met
to
this
share?
morning, which is like crazy. It feels like it was 2 days ago, but it was this morning at 7 a.m. So yeah, I mean, we're just in final stages. The plan is being finalized. Like I said, we're supposed to have this plan roll out on February 4th. And as I told you, and I'll remind you again, because you asked me to remind you, Andy Brockway, the chair of Kelly's Corner Steering Committee, wants to come and talk to us January 12th, so at our next meeting.
112.
Yeah, and
Andy Rockaway.
Andrew Brockway. And so he's planning on that, and now at this point it's going to be about just trying to inform the public about what the plan is, which is why this forum that will release the plan on February 4th is really important. So definitely recommend that everyone goes to that so you can be informed about what it really is, and yeah.
Good.
That's it.
And I noticed, Mr. Dave, that the train station opened last Saturday. Did you know that?
Yeah, the train station was officially opened, and I take it regularly now, so there's a lot of new dynamics in play for those of us who fine-tune their schedule down to 10 seconds in the morning. And well, now you board on the other side, on the south side, so when you the incoming train you'll need to cross over the bridge if you park in the main parking lot. Yeah, there's a stairway or an elevator, but there's a stairway that goes up, across, and then back down, and depends on where you want to be positioned, but if you are going into North Station, you want to be at the very far end, so it's interesting, but it's a very nice station. There's still a little bit of last-minute work going on there, and I think that there's going to be parking lot work next year to potentially expand a little bit around the periphery and stuff, but by far and away, I think the majority of it's complete. And
It looks very nice.
yeah, came out really well. And no, you buy them on the train if you want. or you get the app.
Or online, you buy them online.
Actually, I don't know, but I would guess they'd love to phase those out, just so you do it, because if you pay in cash on the train, there's an extra charge, but if you get the app, it just does right on your credit card. And they are talking about maybe having a coffee little vendor there, so that's something, yes.
Is parking still problematic there?
Yeah, so it's hard to say right now, with the station opened and it's a holiday week more or less, so it's pretty light, but once we get out of that, there's the Richards property on the south side, which there's some talk ongoing with that. And then there is sort of where the rail trail terminates there. I think there's going to be 35 spots once that's opened. And then there is the potential on the other side of the highway on School Street right there. There's a resident lot, but there's some talk of maybe that property there potentially being purchased and metered, which would, I think, essentially cover the purchase price or close to it, but that would add outer town parking. But it's been a problem. I mean, it's always been a problem, and it's just, for me, I get there at 6:38 for that train, typically, or the 5:50, which the new schedule's been delayed, but there's parking for me, but right after that, it fills up relatively quickly. So if you're there at 7, it's a little bit late. So we'll see what happens with these others. My understanding, and in talking to other commuters, is there's the new schedule published has some new express routes which take out West Concord, and Lincoln, and those commuters, those are sort of prize spots. Those routes going in are really good times for them, and so there wasn't a whole lot of public consultation that went into the new schedule, as far as I understand it. And so I saw a few of them had pamphlets that when they got on board of the train that was essentially like, you need to let your congressperson know that they need to get involved in this, and they did, and MBTA pushed the schedule out to May. I think some public input is needed, but this new schedule, at least from an Acton perspective, does add new routes in, and there's more express trains, and there's shorter time from Acton to. Yeah, so even with that, I mean, there's at the very least there'll be signaling enhancements and other types of stuff that they do that I think shaves 6 to 8 minutes off the route. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but twice a day, 250 days a year, it's more time to spend with those people. So,
Now, as a frequent commuter, they're saying the train should get there sooner, from 55 minutes to.
yeah.
Or does it still take the same amount of time?
Well, it just depends on which one you take. There's an express that goes from South Acton to Porter to North Station, and that's like the dream train. That one will even be faster, and I think that one's maybe. No, that's there now. The 708 is the one that does that right now. So right now, on that express train, when I take the express train, it actually has to stop in Porter for 10 minutes because it arrives too early, and then they're sticking to the old schedule. So we literally sit there in Porter Square for up to 10 minutes, so they can depart Porter at the right time. I'm sorry. Yeah, from here to there, which is the signaling enhancements and the double tracking, and amongst a bunch of other things that they had done.
And it has to wait?
Yeah, so this is a good problem to have. They make it. I actually believe pieces of it have been phased in over the months. The train station opening, I think, was the last piece of it. I'm not exactly clear, but I will say that the new schedule, I think, will have two express or semi-express trains in the morning, and more options for, like, I think, an even earlier option, if I remember right. That was a 5:30 train or something. So it'll be nice, because there's the 5:50 train now is pretty crowded, and then the 6:38 is very crowded, and the 708 is very crowded. But to take that one, you need to be dropped off because there's no parking. So anyways, I don't have anything new from the committee's perspective. We haven't met since then, but that committee technically will, I think, have served its use over the next
Well, I
few
just
months.
thought it'd get you as a man on the street observation, who actually uses the service.
Yeah, if you want any nitty-gritty details, we can talk after the meeting, but I could give you all kinds of stories, good and bad, so.
Anyone else need to volunteer anything? And Doug's not here for minutes. We thank Roland for taking the minutes tonight. I'm sure we have a backlog of minutes that we have to publish. I'll have to get on Doug's good side to make sure that happens. Oh, right, it's still wrong. It's been wrong for years. Right. I think Brian said we have to we notify IT. I guess they're the keeper of the
Yes.
keyboard that allows them to edit the Word document. that
When
goes on.
when all else fails, just send it to Mark Hall, and he'll take care of it.
Mark Holt.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, when Steve Barrett sent out the links to the town manager's budget, he also mentioned that questions should be sent through the chair, which is a good reminder for all of us that it's customary that rather than directing your questions, which you may have many, directly to Steve Barrett or Steve Ledoux or anybody else, you should route them through Mike. And the reason for that is not to keep you from getting your questions answered. It's to make sure we don't hit them with 9 duplicate questions of the same kind.
Budget Saturday is the 9th,
Yeah.
so it'll be before we meet on the 12th. So I'm sure there'll be a mailing that will explain that.
So the questions are
outlining,
usually submitted and answered. Usually the answers come just prior to Budget Saturday.
So direct your questions to me. I'll make sure they get published. For the new people, the Budget Saturday is usually held in this room at is it 9 o'clock? 8 or 9. You'll get more details published about that. Yeah. Yeah. And I also, while we're at it, I want to thank Margaret for her outreach program, especially the getting the point of view summary published in the Beacon. They got a prominent exposure last Thursday, so thank you for that. Spelled everyone's name correctly, and
We have a couple people, Bob, and who else is going to do the senior center?
I'm going to do, yeah.
And
The 7th, is it? I think Bob.
the two, yeah.
Yeah. I can do that. How many do you think we need?
I don't know, how many were there? You went last, right, for the senior center?
So it's the summary. We're
Yeah,
Right. We can take care of that. I'll bring the copies. And I think they've been successfully or favorably received so far. The next meeting is the 12th. At the bottom here says the 5th, but it was the 12th. It's the 9th is the Saturday. The 9th is the Budget Saturday. There's also a mailing of the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting and trade show, which is January 22nd and 23rd. If anyone is interested in attending that, they can contact me. I Well, I will be in Vietnam at that time. I got drafted again. No. On the 15th. Yeah. The next meeting after that, I won't. So I think you will be in charge. It's the, yeah, well, 14 days from the 12th, 26th, Tuesday the 26th, will be left in capable hands. Anything else? Do I hear a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion adjourned, is passed. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. See you on Budget Saturday. Yes.